Good morning to everyone. As Philip mentioned, my name's Marina, and I am the new president and CEO here at the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I'm so honored to be with you this morning. I'd like to start off by thanking you for joining us and also extend a special thank you to our partners and friends at SWBC for their panel of industry experts and their participation today. I hope that you find today's discussion helpful and insightful and encourage you to keep our community partners at SWBC in mind for your real estate needs. To tell you a little bit about them, SWBC Mortgage is constantly recognized as one of the top 100 lenders in America and is home to numerous top ranking originators. They credit their superior performance and growth to the commitment of quality service and their highly experienced team, many of whom have been with the company for over 15 years. With that said, I will take some time to introduce today's moderator, John Tober, a senior loan officer with SWBC. For over 20 years, John has been helping homeowners across Texas and most major cities in our state, including some of our neighbor cities in New Braunfels and Boerne and San Marcos. He began his lending career with USAA's home mortgage department and was recognized as their top loan originator for 3 straight years. John's recognized as a top loan originator who has built a loyal customer base by delivering positive results, by helping his clients and exceeding their expectations. He's now joined the team at SWBC Mortgage, and he offers his clients unique product opportunities along with his expertise and advice. John is a proud member of the Bexar County Medical Society, the Greater San Antonio Builders Association, Sabor Realtors and Builder Committee, and he serves right here on our very own Economic Development Committee at the Hispanic Chamber. And with that said, John, thank you for being here. I will turn over the floor to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I appreciate that warm introduction, and we're looking forward to it. We enjoy being a part of the Hispanic Chamber, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in this morning at 10 a.m. It's a Tuesday. We've got a lot of ground to cover, and I'm very excited to get things started. So our topics and our panelists are amazing group of experts. The topic that we'll be discussing today is how the current real estate market is trending. Impacts of a pandemic, and where real estate is headed in 2021. But before we jump into our panelists and their introductions, what I'd like to do is ask everyone on the call a question. I'd like to get an idea if you're asking or wondering yourself these following questions. Is today's housing market sustainable? Is now a good time to buy or sell your home? Have we reached a tipping point in today's first-time buyer market affordability? If any of these hit a chord, these are some really important questions that we'll be covering today, and you are absolutely on the right call. So thank you for joining us. Our goal today, guys, is for whatever the purpose that you decided to join us today, we want to bring some value. We want you to be able to walk away with 2 to 3 points and give you some value of what that'll bring for, whether that's a business, helping your business plan, or helping you with some strategies to purchase your or sell your next home. So really excited at kicking things off. The program will follow this like this. We're going to introduce our amazing panelists, and we will talk about their bios and introductions, and then we'll dive into the questions and walk them through a few series of questions that'll be associated with our panel today. Our time is limited, so we have about an hour of time together. So I want you guys to know that your questions are very important to us. We encourage you to ask those questions. However, this will be the questions will be answered offline. So there will be a Q&A widget that we've provided for you guys. We encourage you to ask those questions. This broad panel is definitely provided for you. So we want to hear from you and want to make sure that we're answering the questions that you guys have for us today. Sounds good? Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I want to introduce our first panelist. He is a highly recognized and rewarded realtor in San Antonio. He has earned the title of a #1 real estate team in San Antonio several years in a row. He's a national coach, a mentor with a long list of professional designations. He's the owner of the Schrader Group, Mr. Dayton Schrader. Welcome, Dayton.
Good morning, John. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Our next panelist is known as the regional real estate and economic expert. He speaks to real estate groups across the country, serves on several advisory boards in the state of Texas, At his current position, he focuses on market changes and their impacts on the real estate industry. He's currently serving as the Director of Information Capital at Independence Title, Mr. Mark Sprague.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mark. Thank you for coming. Glad you're here, guys. You guys ready to jump in?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's do this. So our first question, Dayton, this one will be for you. It's going to be on the topic of COVID. COVID's changed the way we do business, how we handle our personal lives. How has the real estate industry adjusted to ensure a safe transaction?
Okay, that's a great question. That's been an ongoing issue. I think people in San Antonio are very respectful of one another and respectful of the lethality, the lethalness of COVID. So we've had people be really careful and cautious about showing houses. We've adopted virtual appointments, Zoom appointments. We've had opportunity to sell several houses off of video for out-of-town buyers that couldn't travel to San Antonio. We've done quite a few listing presentations via video. And then when people are showing houses, they're asked to kick their shoes off, put on booties, put on masks, not touch anything. We've asked our sellers to leave the drapes open, leave the closet doors open to reduce people touching handles and things like that. People leave hand sanitizer out of the house. And so it's cut down a little bit on the discretionary stuff, but generally speaking, we're having a fantastic year. And people are being super careful about respecting boundaries of either buyers or sellers, making sure the house is vacant when they go to look at it, and then getting in and out quickly, and sometimes not carpooling, maybe driving in separate cars to appointments and so on and so on. But I think our industry has adapted really well. I think our clients have adapted really well to the reality of what's going on. And so it's been minor inconveniences, but for the most part, we're doing fine and the world's still turning.
Love to hear that. So it sounds like the real estate market hasn't slowed down at all.
Oh goodness, no, it's been a fantastic year with interest rates being as low as they are. And I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves in the conversation, but the economy in San Antonio is still really good. I know the hospitality business has been hurt bad, tourism, restaurants and bars and things like that. But the biggest part of our economy is military, medical, education, financial services, retirement, and construction. And while they've all been inconvenienced, they're still getting paid. And so a big chunk of our economy is still marching forward and doing really well. And I think the discretionary portion of our economy will come back, but I know those people are hurting and have been hurt badly. But the big majority of our economy is still really solid and moving forward. And we've got the job growth and the in-migration, and all those things are still very much in our favor. We've been very blessed to have a most diverse, most robust economy I think we've ever had. This is my 38th year in the business, and I've lived in San Antonio since I was 3 years old. So I've watched this town double, and it'll double again in the next 30 years because of all the things that we put in place.
I love hearing that. Okay, so next question. Has COVID-19 changed the reason why people are considering to sell or buy their home today?
Well, I think to a certain extent, yes. If people recognize they don't want to be cooped up in an apartment or small living quarters for the foreseeable future, that they're going to seize that opportunity, and for almost what you could pay in rent, or maybe a little bit more, you could have a yard and a garage and a little bit of breathing room. So I think there's some of that reality has set in. And I've had several clients where both mom and dad are working from the house, and at some point they were trying to homeschool as well. And that was pretty tight quarters. Roommates and young couples trying to work from the house is not as convenient, or the new wears off of that really fast. And so they're looking for a little bit of breathing room. And again, the fact that rates are so low, that's really helped our economy. And I think that's going to stay for everybody that I subscribe to and listen to and talk to, indicate that rates are going to stay really, really low through 21 and even 22. And John, you probably know more about that than I do. But that's all just gives us great opportunities here in San Antonio.
Totally agree. You know, it's you brought some good perspective when it comes to what's changed with COVID, and how homes today, without having room of a home office, it changes the perspective of how much space you actually have.
the dynamics and the functionality of living in a house, it's challenging people a little bit.
Mark, I've got a question for you. So forbearance plan, it was designed to help families in need defer mortgage payments and get back on their feet. With the upcoming expiration of this program, could this cause the next housing crash?
No, let's understand something first is no lender wants to foreclose or take back a property. They're going to try to work to the greatest effect to keep that owner in there. Number one, what people forget in such a robust market is that it's a robust market. So the chance of foreclosures in San Antonio and in most Texas are slim and none. Secondly, it's a very timely process, a minimum, if everything's in place, of 9 months to 12 months. And then the cost for a lender is anywhere from 12 to 12 months plus. And then lastly, we don't have the speculation we had previously in 2008, 2009. We just have not had, as lenders, we've been much more strict on enforcement of that. Collections on a side note for most multifamilies at 99% in our region, which is surprising particularly when you read the papers. So I don't think it's an issue at this point, definitely not in Texas, but I think as a nation, it's not much of an issue. However, the only thing that's really driving it is the media comment, and that's not me being against the media. Everything I look at in dealing with government officials and everybody wants to quote that, and I said, okay, where are you getting the numbers? And the response is, well, that's what the paper says, or that's what we got from the Tenants Council. And yes, there is going to be a little bit, but we see no more than probably 1% to 2% difference in collections at this point. So I think that is a non-event at this point, particularly in San Antonio, Dallas, and Austin. Houston, because of the oil, we'll see some foreclosures, but again, they're at least a year out.
You know, what's interesting about the forbearance plan is going into this market, not knowing what was to come from this new plan. It's been surprising to see the decline of forbearances being, originated. So it seems as though people are finding some categories are finding themselves in a better position today than they were before.
I totally agree with that. Again, people are saving more. One of the things that happened in March is the regulators came to the banks and said, you need to put more reserves up. Now, the reason the banks are having profits is because nobody's going out to eat, nobody's buying pants. Everybody's buying new shirts, but nobody's buying bottoms and shoes and socks and so on. I can go into that. And so what we've seen is savings have increased across the United States by about 7 times. So that's good news for us. And one thing I want to say to the question you asked, Dayton, we need to count the blessings that our industry is an essential business. If it had not been essential business, which originally the state did not agree to, some states did not agree that realtors and everything attached to them were not essential businesses, we would be having a whole different discussion right now because we wouldn't have any income. So I do think we need to understand that not all businesses have reopened, but we've been able to work from day one in putting proper things in place, whether it's remote closings at your title companies, whether it's the parameters put in place by the San Antonio Board of Realtors. So we've been very blessed. But again, what people forget in a market like this when they ask me about foreclosures is we're in such a robust market. I mean, 6 months or less is a seller's market, but when you stay at 2 months, under 2 or 3 months of inventory, which is what San Antonio stayed at, that's what I call a robust market, i.e. the chance of multiple bids of having to pay more than what it was listed for or greater if it's priced correctly. And people go, well, what do you mean by that? I said, historically, if it's priced correctly, you'll see multiple bids, and that's what we're seeing in San Antonio and other markets.
Totally agree with that. And that actually brings me to my next question. So I want to dive into that a little deeper. Dayton, this one's for you. In September, the San Antonio Board of Realtors reported a 2.3 month supply of housing inventory. How has this affected sellers and buyers today in comparison to this time last year?
Well, as Mark alluded to, every home is unique, but there are certain submarkets where they're especially attractive. And just recently, I had a buyer that I was working with buying in the 230 range. We made offers on 8 different houses and got beat out on multiple bids every single time. We ended up finally with the 9th house that we paid a little bit over asking price for to get. And it was close to the medical center, like I said, in the low 2s. And so there are a ton of people swarming in those markets. 1-story homes under 300 or even under 400,000 are selling very quickly. As the price goes up, you get that north of 400, north of 500. The buyers start to thin out just a little bit, but there's a tremendous flight to quality. If it's a really nice house, priced well, even $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, $900,000, they're selling and they're moving fairly quickly. And generally speaking, the absorption rate across the board is probably 60 days. It might vary in certain submarkets to the first couple of weeks on the market to maybe 3 or 4 months, but it shouldn't be anything beyond that. It's just definitely not priced right based on our current absorption rate. I think the builders are still very cautious. They still have enough institutional memory about when the music stopped years ago. And I survived that. I know Mark survived that. You survived that, John. We were before this call, we were even joking about in the 80s and when the music stopped and how we've managed to morph and adjust and get through those times. So this is nothing like that. Back then, interest rates were 16 or 17%. There were no jobs in San Antonio to begin with. And so now we've got a much better setup. So again, that low inventory, the buyers have to be pre-qualified with a really great lender like SWBC. They've got to understand that they may have to bid a little bit extra. The challenge there is the appraisals haven't caught up with the values of the houses. And so for a buyer, that house might be worth 230 to that buyer. It might be worth $5,000 over the asking price, but the appraiser's looking back 6 months at sales that don't reflect the current market condition or how much that house is worth to that particular buyer based on their needs. So that's a little bit of a struggle, a little bit of friction there, but we're working through most of those and getting them done. And so, but they definitely have to be pre-qualified with a legit lender and know exactly what they're willing to pay, what their comfort level is on their mortgage payments. Otherwise, that offer is going to get rejected out of hand 9 times out of 10.
That's a great point. Very good point. When it comes to lending and in this type of market that we're in, flexibility, agility, and accurate approvals are super important. So yeah, thank you for touching on that, Dayton. I appreciate you sharing that insight. Mark, let's talk about how we got here. How did we manage to get here? And do you see that we are now hitting a tipping point in the first-time buyer affordability?
Well, how we got here, obviously COVID, none of us expected a shutdown or what I call worker suppression. And people go, why are you saying that? I said, because we have people that want to work that can't work from day one. Initially, you had about 40+ million put out of jobs. Presently in Texas, that's dropped dramatically, but we still probably have 15% of the population in all of our metros unemployed. The builders are adjusting to it very aggressively. What we're seeing in all of our markets, that the outer rim markets where land is cheaper, is actually going to smaller lots. And people go, okay, smaller than what? I said smaller than 50 foot. I would say most of your builders, to keep the price under 200,000, are looking at 45, 40 foot, 35 foot lots. So the good news is that the builders are very aware of it, because not only do they have the issue of more business than they anticipated, but secondly, materials and labor have gone up dramatically. And when I say dramatically, people go, how much? I said, if I look at it nationally, you're seeing about a 2% to 3% increase monthly. And a great example is lumber. I don't think any of us anticipated the number of do-it-yourself projects. Lumber demand has more than doubled since March. And if you don't believe that, go to your nearest Home Depot, Lowe's, and get there past 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, you'll see that all the lumber is gone because people are working at home. So affordability is always an issue, but we always drive to qualify. So what we're going to see is lower prices by the builders in farther locations. I mean, whether it's San Antonio, whether it's Dallas, whether it's Houston, we just continue to see it go farther out. And people go, well, that's sprawl. And I'm going, yes, it is. But in Texas, everybody wants a piece of land. And I said, the good news is although you want to complain about traffic, I'll tell you, the worse the traffic, the healthier the economy, which is not what anybody wants to hear, but it's honest to God truth. I mean, none of us fly into LA or Boston or New York expecting to get across town in a millisecond like we do from our home. But it is a challenge. And if rates go up, as we've discussed, as statement has discussed, if rates go up, then we'll see a slowdown. And that always happens. But what happens at that slowdown is you see business slow down or stop for about 90 days, and then people jump back in historically because they go, oh my goodness, rates aren't going to be my granddad's rates. And I do kid about that, my granddad's rates again. And one of the things we've seen with rates as low as they are, historically, Dayton and I are the same vintage. We used to see people turn over houses every 3 to 7 years. Well, people are staying in their houses 12 to 15 years now. And why? I'm going to pick on my son right now. They're moving from one house to another. He's not selling his house. He's renting it. And I said, why? He said, because I'll never see below 3% interest rate again. Why? I had that same discussion. You can't see my face, but I'm smiling from ear to ear. I had that same discussion with my granddad when I'd ask him about the properties he owned, whether on Guadalupe, or I'd go, are you ever going to sell it? And he goes, no, I'll never see 3% interest rates again. So everybody's turned into my granddad is holding on to their properties. So yes, it's a challenge, but I think the builders are stepping up to it. It's interesting. I don't see it in San Antonio, but I particularly have seen it in the other Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin. The big pushback is people inside the city want to build ADUs, want to build additional housing on their lots, particularly the small infill builders. And the cities, the neighborhoods are pushing back. We're seeing a lot of people pulling deed restrictions that have been in place 70, 80, 90 years and look at the deed restrictions to see what they can do because a lot of those restrictions say no more than 1 unit per lot, which is different from what the land code says. And deed restrictions beat land code. Restrictions are there in perpetuity. So you will see our value is going to continue to go up. I believe so. Is affordability an issue? No, you just have to drive farther for qualifications. And all of us learned that when we first looked at a house. I know Dayton growing up in San Antonio and started doing well. He probably looked at housing like I did and went, well, I'm going to move into where I grew up. And then you go, oh, I can't afford that. And so whether it's a rental, whether it's a home, we're all going to drive till we qualify. So when people want to argue with me and said it's not as affordable, I said, when you say that, what do you mean? Well, in my neighborhood, I said, and you'd rather see the opposite? You'd rather see tremendous depreciation? And they go, well, no. But I said, well, I'd like to have a 30-inch waist again. That's just not going to happen.
Mark, I want to go back to something that you said earlier. You were talking about builders and how builders are trying to put these houses on these small lots. It seems like Home Depot, Lowe's, they are starting to help or market towards today's investor. So when it comes to today's investor, and we're looking at properties being flipped, and some of these existing properties creating our inventory. What type of challenges or obstacles do you see today's investor running into next year in 2021?
Well, the regulations put by the different municipalities around San Antonio, all the markets, is going to continue to be an issue because of its cost. But outside that, I would say the biggest issue, and for builders, and they'll tell you this, at the top of the list is labor, because we're not producing labor. And people go, well, it's is that because of immigration? I said, well, it's multiple reasons. Yeah, immigration's part of it, but I said the other part of that is when I was going to school, you were forced to take industrial arts, so you had to learn how to do a square frame, et cetera. We're not teaching those industrial arts anymore, which is unfortunate. So we don't have labor. And then on top of that, presently, materials are an issue, whether it's cabinets, whether it's lumber, whether it's cement. None of us anticipated the demand that would be coming. In March, April, I don't know where Dayton or you in your management were. I thought that we would see a delay of the season, i.e. buying season that we'd normally see in March, April, May. And we did. It was pushed into July, June, July, August, and a little bit of September. I didn't see to the extent that we'd see that push. As Dayton so appropriately mentioned, I think people are sitting in their apartment with their significant other and going, I like them, but I don't like them that close. And so, they're looking, it's going to be interesting to see what we have, because right now we have my daughter who moved back with us is working from home. Well, guess what? She took over my studies. So I'm actually talking to you from a bedroom.
I've lived that world, trust me.
I think a lot of people, as they look, this is wrong. And it's not wrong, but you know what I'm saying? And then if my wife gets on a Zoom call with her friends, we have actually changed providers because the bandwidth is not there. So, and that's one of the great fears we had from a state perspective is that unfortunately, if the COVID got out into the rural areas, that we didn't have the medical or bandwidth. And people go, bandwidth? I said, yeah, because if you don't have the bandwidth, you can't teach school. If you can't teach school, the income's not there. And that, so, but I do believe as we go forward that affordability will be relative. Unfortunately, we're not seeing both of you, basically whatever you kill, you get to eat. I'm on a salary. I do get bonuses, but we're not going to see raises across the board in the United States or in Texas, particularly with what's happening in oil, et cetera. So I think at some point, probably 2021, 2022, there's going to be a come to Jesus meeting of affordability, because we'll see rates probably go up at that point. And it'll be interesting because I don't believe you can legislate affordability, although I know the city of Austin, I know certain powers in San Antonio have tried to legislate affordability. And I've never seen that be successful any place in the world. And not being a capitalist, I'm being very frank with you. So people go, but usually when they say it's not affordable, it's what they're speaking of is where they grew up has gone up in appreciation. And by the way, San Antonio over the last 50 years, historically has averaged about 3% appreciation. You've not had crazy years, double-digit appreciation. None of the Texas markets have. So you'll just have to drive farther. And I think we've got to realize that and not gripe about it. By the way, San Antonio or Austin are the only places I really get a pushback on traffic on a side.
Well, that's a great points there, Mark. Thank you for sharing that perspective as well. Dayton, this one's for you. I've got a question for you when it comes to we've had some really successful years in real estate over the last 8 to 9 years. We have some really good positive growth year over year. In your opinion, where is the real estate market headed in the next 1 to 5 years?
I think as a city, as a municipality, and as a SMSA, if you will, San Antonio, there's no limit. I mean, we've got no natural boundaries, so we can just kind of keep going out in concentric rings, which helps our affordability. We've got a great infrastructure, although I'll argue with you about 1604 or 281, but it's finally getting done. Maybe 15 years late, but it's getting done. And it's always going to be a work in process, but as they extend 1604, Highway 90 all the way out to Castroville. People have finally discovered Castroville and Medina Valley, and I think that'll be the next Smithson Valley. And I think that area is going to explode as the water and the sewer becomes available to that part of San Antonio and Bexar County. So I think we're just very blessed. We've gotten over being a one-trick pony of being all military. We're still military city USA. There's no doubt about it. And we've got so much else. We've got over 120, 130,000 people enrolled in college in San Antonio. So we've got a great hospital system. We've got a great service economy. When tourism comes back, there's no doubt everybody's second home in Texas is San Antonio, between the Pearl and the Alamo and SeaWorld and Fiesta, Texas. It's the place to go. And I think just after after 9/11, people aren't going to want to go to Mexico or Hawaii necessarily, but they'll come to San Antonio. And I think those parks will explode again. And the traffic and the tourism and all that's going to be what draws people to San Antonio, the charm, the culture, the friendliness and all that. It's just a fantastic city. It's a completely different vibe from Austin or Houston or Dallas.
Absolutely.
And so I love our town. If we can get past now, why we have 35 municipalities in this day and age and 17 school districts is a whole other conversation. But if we can get out of our own way, and I think we have over the last 30 years, and started acting like the 7th largest city in the country, and we made some remarkable progress and some remarkable changes in how we operate as a city and as a county for that matter. And I just think the sky's the limit. I think we're going to keep growing. I think we're going to double again in the next 30 years. I think the surrounding area, the bedroom communities, the surrounding counties, Guadalupe, Comal, Kendall, Atascosa, Wilson County are going to continue to grow and grow. And I think it's going to be a great place to live for a really long time.
So when it comes to demand has been one of those continued efforts that we've had in real estate. Do you see that the pent-up demand we have is bound to continue in the next couple of years, or what's your perspective on the supply-demand issue and where we are today?
So purely anecdotal, but I'm bearing down on 60, and my generation, if you were lucky enough to go to college, you got married right out of school typically, and you went to Houston or Austin or Dallas for a job. You didn't come back to San Antonio. And so household formation happened a lot faster. Now household formation has really fallen back. Most kids are not getting married. Most young adults are not getting married until their late 20s or early 30s. That's a fairly new phenomenon, and that's been going on for about 10 years now. So that's starting to spill over the dam a little bit. And after the meltdown of 08 and 09, there was a lot of student debt. A lot of people weren't sure about their careers, weren't sure about their finances. We've gotten over that hump. And so that's a cascading effect of those young people growing up, getting married, starting to start families, starting to turn into their parents and buy houses and move to the suburbs. That's happening. And that, along with, again, generally speaking, I know some people are really getting hurt right now, but generally speaking, a pretty good economy in San Antonio, coupled with really low interest rates and affordable housing, has just perpetuated all of that. And Mark alluded to this earlier, the builders, most of the big builders are publicly traded. So they've got a demand, regardless of what the circumstances are or the local economy, they've got demands made on them. So they're becoming a lot more vertically integrated. So you'll see builders that were typically building on traditional 50 and 60 and 80-foot lots are finding a 40-foot product or even a 30-foot product because they want to sell houses. And so not everybody can afford a $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 house. So they've got to deliver an affordable product in the twos. And that might, so when you reverse engineer all that, you get back down to a 40-foot lot or an attached product or a smaller, really cute, very well appointed house, but a house that more people can afford in the high hundreds or low twos. Maybe you got to go a little bit further out. You got to have a different value proposition, but they're smart enough to figure that out, and they've got to deliver to their shareholders, and they've got to keep their market share up. So they're going to keep driving, and that's the best part of capitalism is people are going to find out where the customer is, and they're going to meet that demand. They can't just say, no, we're not going to do that, or they do at their peril. So they'll figure it out. They'll deliver a product that most people can afford, that's a quality product, and that's going to be driven by good school districts and good amenity centers and a good quality of life, security, access to infrastructure and retail and restaurants and things like that. So they're going to make it happen, and we're all the beneficiaries of that. Title and myself as a broker, and mortgage for that matter, we're all very much the beneficiaries. We don't put any product on the shelf. We just get to live off of their equity and their sweat, and we're very blessed to do that.
Go ahead.
I want to say something that Dayton didn't say, Dayton. Your cost of living in San Antonio is so attractive comparatively to the other metros in Texas. And I know you know that, but when I'm talking to CEOs across the state and across the nation, that's brought up all the time. And I think as you go forward, that will become more and more attractive, particularly as we see the regulations and the costs on the West Coast and East Coast continue to escalate. And San Antonio is a great looking city. You got the hills, you got just the livability of it and the tradition. I go back to Fiesta, where you can see a great grandmother with a great grandbaby walking around. That type of tradition I'm seeing becomes more and more attractive to these companies as their employees have families. So as you said, I think San Antonio has tremendous upside, more so than a lot of other metros in the nation.
We've been very blessed. When we brought for HEB relocated here from Corpus Christi in the late 80s, we picked St. Louis's pocket with Southwestern Bell in the early 90s, and then that brought in Bell South and AT&T and all of that, and of course then Dallas picked our pocket ultimately, but in the meantime we had a great run with all of that in San Antonio, and then here comes Toyota, and then here comes Whataburger from Corpus Christi, and we're never going to be Dallas. We can't compete with them at that level, but we can sure be a great San Antonio and have a tremendous economy, a great quality of life. And again, Houston's a different vibe. And if you're young and single and making a lot of money, Houston or Dallas or Austin are great places to be. But I think to raise a family and live a really good life in San Antonio, you can't beat it. You can go watch your kid do the play. People don't frown at you when you leave your desk for something like that. You can still get back to work. You can't do that in Houston or Dallas. You can't drive from downtown Houston back to the Woodlands to watch your kids say the Pledge of Allegiance. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to drive from downtown Dallas to Prosper and watch your kid do a recital and then drive back to work. It's just not going to happen. So San Antonio, it's just a different culture, different mindset, very family oriented, and all the other things that Mark mentioned. Just the culture, the warmth, the friendliness, the safety. I mean, we're not prone to a lot of stuff. It broke my heart to see people boarding up stores in downtown San Antonio this morning. That's just, in my mind, absolutely unacceptable. No reason for that. It just kills me that would even be a thought in anybody's mind, regardless of your politics or the outcome or anything else. I do not understand that. That's beyond my ability. And so I hope we fix that real quick, and I hope nobody acts out today or tomorrow or the next day. That's just unacceptable in my mind. So sorry, well, way off track on that.
No, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Mark, let's talk about home appreciation. San Antonio has seen some of the best home appreciation in the last several years, but some have an unsettling concern about what happened back in 2008. So is this market too good to be true? Are we in a bubble? Are we headed in a bubble? Or are we in a recovery?
Because it's you, John, I'm going to answer a lot more friendly. If that was the media asking me, I would be near strangle because I get that question from all the time. I said, why do you always want to lead with bad news? We're not in a bubble. As I said, you have nice, steady appreciation. What caused the bubble in 2008, 2009 was basically 4 states, the Sand States: California, Nevada, Arizona, Florida. And what was caused there is you had tremendous appreciation, over 40% as a state in California in 07, I believe, whereas Texas had, I think, 2.63 at the same time. We had the lowest appreciation. So because of that, we haven't seen the speculation. We also, because I think we went through the 80s, have been much more conservative in our lending. So number one, we're not in a bubble. Number two, you're going to continue to see good, steady appreciation as long as you continue to attract jobs. Without jobs, none of us are in business. So as long as you attract 22,000 plus jobs in San Antonio, about 10,000 per million people, you'll be in an okay place. If you do better than that, then you're in an even better place. So no, we're not in a bubble. No, we're not at the top of our appreciation. No, I'm not concerned presently about any areas having tremendous appreciation in Texas because we're builder builds, say D.R. Horton, Lennar, whoever. I will tell you, they always see double-digit appreciation when they pull out of a community. That's just an historical norm. We see anywhere from 20 to 35% appreciation that first couple of years when they pull out. But no, we're not in a bubble. I know we're all nervous, but I'm the most conservative person on this call, to the point that I'm called Dr. No. Old clients call me Mr. Negative. I'm okay with all that because I've been through it all. If you break through my numbers, fine. But right now, San Antonio continues to be in a phenomenal place. You did not have enough shelter going into this. You're not going to have enough shelter coming out of this residentially. So that's both rentals as well as for sale. I don't see anything other than a catastrophic economic event. People always want to ask me, what could that be? I said, what if we have another disease outbreak while we're in this one, or a terrorist attack? But I said the chance of that is slim and none. Right. So you're in a good place. I know historically, once we're burned, it takes 11 good things to get us in a comfort zone again. And even then, because we've been punched in the stomach once, we're constantly looking for that second punch. So Texas just is not there. And I keep saying Texas because then I look at East Coast and West Coast, and you got a number of issues. You have too much regulation. You have corporate enforcement that is causing companies moving out of Seattle, out of San Francisco, and people go, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, let me give you Amazon. Presently, Seattle has put a head tax. If you make over $150,000 and work for Amazon, I am going to tax you per employee. Well, that's not corporate friendly at all. What people tend to forget when they put those taxes out there is I can do business anywhere I want to. And so if I want to move someplace else in the United States to escape that, I'm going to. And the good news is that you're in San Antonio. Good news is that you're in Texas. And to suggest that type of thing, I think most voters, most politicians realize that that would not be something we would be accepting of. So no, we're not in a bubble. No, am I concerned about your long-term appreciation? The only time I hear people gripe about appreciation in Texas is when they can't buy in the neighborhood they grew up in. And I don't say that lightly because I can't tell you how many of my own compatriots that work around me younger that come to me and say, hey, I want to live in Central Austin where I'm renting right now, and prices keep going up. And I said, what's better than the alternative? And then I'll sit down with them and, close the door and say, well, you drive a brand new Mercedes, you wear really nice clothes, you might want to think about saving some. And they've all come back to me, and instead of saying, get out of my face, Mr. Sprague, they go, thank you. And I say, no, I understand we all go there. I said, I was blessed to be a consultant during the Dell explosion years. I was a consultant to Dell, and I used to teach a finance class. And I said, everybody's going to go through an exotic car stage, through a travel stage. But at some point, you need to save money to buy a home because that's where your equity, better than stock market, that's where your equity builds up long-term and is a great return, whether it's investment. And I said, don't look at your home as an investment, whether it's an investment or whether it's your home. So no, and sorry to kind of get on a pulpit there, but for the last 9-10 years, I get that question. Are we in a bubble?
No.
Dana, I'd love to hear your perspective. You're on the ground, you see it, you live it. Well, what is your thoughts on this?
Well, our market is very credit driven. Thank you so much. Credit driven and equity driven. It's really pure right now. In fact, with the crash of '08, it was stated loans. And if anybody ever saw The Big Short, it's one of the best movies ever. And it really explains that. But now it's equity driven, credit driven. You got to prove everything. And the lenders are held to such a high standard. Basically, essentially, they're held to a standard of this buyer has to make all 360 payments. And if they don't, for whatever reason, the lender has to either buy that loan back or explain why that person got sick or got laid off. There's no way they could anticipate that. So it's a really high standard for any mortgage. And then as Mark said, it's all about the jobs. If you've got a job, you're not worried about making your mortgage payment. And if you're not selling your house, you're not worried about what your house is worth. And thankfully in San Antonio, and I can only speak San Antonio, we've got really good job growth. And that magic number of 20,000 jobs a year is great for everybody. Now, this one's going to be a weird year. There's no doubt about it. But historically, if we track in that 15 to 20, 22,000 jobs a year in San Antonio, we're hitting on all cylinders. That plus just the population growth and so on and so on, we're in great shape. And it's never going to be the volatility of other markets. But again, we're very diverse in San Antonio, thankfully, as an economy. So nobody's getting laid off. We've survived all the base alignments and closures. We've actually been, at the end of the day, we're probably the beneficiary of a lot of that. It hurt to lose Kelly, but since then we've come back with all the missions at Fort Sam and SAMC and Lackland and Randolph. And so at the end of the day, we've come out ahead of that deal. And so we thank our representatives for that. And again, the fact that we're very military friendly, we're able to attract and keep those missions here, and the city works night and day to protect those missions. So that's huge for us. I think we're going to be in great shape. So I don't see any bubble at all in San Antonio. So, like Mark said, sort of something catastrophic happening, and then I think there's going to be a flight to quality. It would have to be an unimaginable event, because we're far enough inland from hurricanes. We don't get hit by tornadoes typically. We don't have earthquakes in San Antonio. I mean, we're just really, really safe and in a great bubble where we are right now.
So what I heard through all that, it's the lender's fault if we don't continue going. Is that what you were saying?
Absolutely, 100% on the lender. And that and the builder's not putting a product on the shelf.
Audience, I'm kidding. It's not.
We've been through a lot. Going back to employment in San Antonio, Mark, I'd love to hear your perspective on, COVID is changed a lot of, so some of the struggles that small business owners are going through. And I'm wondering what and we haven't even, this is a new question for you. So I'm wondering if the corporate world is slowing down on, or if San Antonio is still going to continue to receive the introductions of new businesses here to San Antonio.
Yeah, yes and no. First, let's be very open with our Texas economy. And I'm going to pick on Houston right now. Houston, just this year, just in oil, has lost 229,000 jobs. Most of those are high-paying jobs. Well, you're a little bit oil-based, not near to this extent that Houston is. So Houston, of all the markets, will probably, once COVID precautions are taken off, will probably take a lot longer than the rest of the state to recover. Midland, to the same extent. But technology will continue to be what attracts people to Central Texas, particularly San Antonio. You put a ton of graduates out of your military down there that have high technology capabilities. So I say nothing but opportunity. And I'm going to throw out something. The Army Futures Command that decided to reside here in Texas spent $3.5 billion last year on 28 startups. So some of those startups are in San Antonio, some of them are at Texas A&M. Obviously, some are here in Austin. I think with the graduates that you're putting out of your military, which has always bugged me, by the way, that corporations are not going down there and taking those veterans when they go into retirement with all their technology and all their capabilities that are state of the art, that they have not employed them. And so I think that you have nothing but upside as you go forward on the technology side. And because Austin is so close, and because DFW is close enough, I think that you will continue to attract the technology that has been attracted to the other cities. The other thing that we have not gotten traction from presently, to the extent that I thought we would, is medical. You've got a great medical facility. Yes, there's medical facilities in Houston, but opening up a medical school at UT was to keep doctors here. But I've had 3.5 years ago, I had two of the out of the top 3 largest pharmaceutical companies looking to move to Texas, and they still haven't made the decision. I mean, they're going to come to Texas because of our cost of employees, our cost of living, et cetera. So there's still opportunity on the medical side that we've not even begun to see. But understand that the oil downturn, although you were a recipient by location of the previous upturn, that it's going to be a while before we see that again. And when I say a while, with the oil war, the reason that happened in March is because we're doing 30 million barrels less a day. We've gotten better. I think we're only to 14 million barrels a day short of where we were in February. That's billions of dollars. So you'll see multiple oil companies, and you're already seeing mergers and such. So that hurts San Antonio to some extent, but the good news is, whether it's a Rackspace or other homegrown tech companies, you have nothing but upside. So what I see for San Antonio, and I say this to CEOs, they say, what are the negatives about San Antonio? What are the positives? Well, I said, well, the first thing, the negatives are still the positives, i.e., there is so much trained workforce down in San Antonio that comes out of the military that is not reemployed in that city. I said, I see nothing but upside from that. I said, it's not had the juiciness of, say, Dallas, Fort Worth, or Austin. But that said, it's still, I said, San Antonio just continues to putter at its own speed and do well, doesn't care about what's happening in other markets, and just moves forward. At times, when other markets in Texas have been shaken, San Antonio just putters along. And I can't see it strong enough. So if equity came to me and said, hey, we have $10 billion, what would you invest in? And I said, well, I'd look at Houston, but I'd look at San Antonio, because I see nothing. How long do you want to hold it? And typically they want to hold it 10 years plus. I go, I see nothing but nice, steady growth. The parameters that you give me fit into what I would do in San Antonio. And by the way, I'd never have anybody spend $10 billion in one market in Texas in the first place, because that would overwhelm a market. But you've got nothing but upside. I mean, I can't see that strongly enough from an analyst standpoint. And people go, well, he's just a promoter of the marketplace. And my response is, no. Do you want me to transfer you to Albuquerque, New Mexico? Because Albuquerque, New Mexico is not near in the place any of the metros are here in Texas. And I can go on and on. I said, so understand that at times my management, previous companies and such, wanted to strangle me, because in 04, 05, I said, we have too many lots, we have too many houses, we have too many apartments being built. Well, I can't tell you how many clients canceled their services with me, but they came back because it's not about me being right, but I'm just a numbers guy. As I told you earlier and told Philip, I said, I'm an equal opportunity offender. I don't mean to offend anybody in the room, but invariably, as I watch people's heads drop, I go, well, I don't know why you're taking that so harshly, because here's what the numbers show. So again, it goes back to pure numbers. And as far as that's concerned, San Antonio, all channels continues to be in a phenomenal place, in a robust market. It'll continue that way. I will tell you, 2021 will be good. Will be more continuance of 2020. 2022 will probably hit a plateau, and then 2023 will explode again. And why will we hit a plateau? Because presently, as Dayton said earlier, low interest rates are basically stealing from the future of sales, i.e., when rates go up, it will slow down the market dramatically. So you're stealing from people from tomorrow for today's sales. And that's not a bad thing. That happens all the time.
Well,
Long-winded answer. No, long-winded answer to your question.
okay, well, everyone, that was our last question of the day. It concludes our panel discussion. Thank you so much for joining us. We covered some great ground together, and some of the topics for some of those who have tuned in a little late to our discussion, we were covering important topics regarding COVID-19, the impact of real estate, the trends in housing, and where we're headed in 2021 in real estate. So I want to thank our panelists. Dayton Schrader, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. It's an honor. Mark, I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate you guys. Y'all had some great insight. You definitely did not disappoint. So I appreciate y'all joining us today. Everyone, that concludes it. Oh, questions. We encourage you guys, don't forget we have that Q&A widget. So please submit your questions. We will absolutely answer those for you. And mortgage questions as well. Let us know. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Stay healthy. See you.
Okay, go vote, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, John. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Dayton, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I know you, I just realized you have a core summit tomorrow.
Yeah, we start, tomorrow about, I don't know, 10, 11 o'clock. And so it's bell to bell.